Herzlich willkommen zu 99:1. Welcome to 99:1. This today is an English episode. We will be speaking about Gaza one more time, and for that we have no one else but the one of the authors of this great book, The Holocaust and the Nakba, Amos Goldberg, and I'll bring him in without further ado. Welcome to 99:1, Amos.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Nadine.
Thanks for being here. For everybody who doesn't know, Amos is a professor of Holocaust studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and a leading scholar of the Holocaust and genocide studies. His work explores cultural history, trauma, and memory, and quite some notable publications, including the book Trauma in First Person, Diary Writing During the Holocaust. And this book, as I mentioned, The Holocaust and the Nakba, a new grammar of trauma and history. Amos already, now nearly 1.5 years ago, published an article in Hebrew with the title, Yes, It is Genocide. It was also translated to English. We will link them up here. We have posted up some links and some exemplary video statements, let's say, of Amos' position in the description down here. Check them out if you want. And yes, today we want to talk about the statement and understand more about how such situations come to be, like the ones that we are witnessing now in Gaza. Yes, Amos, anything to add on this side, or shall we continue?
I will just add that in January 2025, I published with my friend and colleague Daniel Blattman another big article in Haaretz, which was translated to English and Arabic and other languages, also asserting and meticulously explaining why it is genocide.
Yeah. And there was also, I also read another article, I think in October 24 in Le Monde, which was also making this argument that probably we'll also explore today. So maybe...
Since I reached this conclusion, I really try to be as vocal as I can. This is what we learned, that we have to try to stop genocides, not to keep silent about them.
Yeah, so Amos, can you maybe give us a short intro, even though you have done this already many times, but we would like to complete this also for this episode. Can you give us an intro on how you formed your judgment on what is happening in Gaza and how your view also maybe has changed since Israel's start of the operation, since October 7th?
Yes, of course. I mean, I was fully aware before the October of Israeli crimes, since the Nakba and the apartheid and the siege. This is not something that I was not aware of. I'm very active intellectually, but also actively against the occupation, against inequality, for a better future, for some kind of a constitutional change in Israel. Israel-Palestine, maybe we will get to it. So this is not something, 7th of October did not appear from the sky to me, just not, we were expecting some kind of violent eruption, and we knew that this is not sustainable. But still, the 7th of October was a huge shock. It was a very big trauma. I can say it was, in my eyes, criminal, and it was also very personal. It's very personal because I knew people who were taken hostages. I knew communities that were destructed. I knew. So it really took time to find the words. I can say that very early on, within days, I understood that it's going in a wrong way. The counter-attack, these bombardments, which proved to be one of perhaps the most lethal in the 21st century. The first month was one of perhaps the most lethal. I think the most lethal for children, undoubtedly, in the 21st century. And I understood that, but I could not formulate it already to myself. And when you go out, you have to be certain that what you say you can back. I could not do this until December, January. Now my friends like Raz Segal, for example, already came out on the 13th of October, and Martin Shawn and other that asserting it is a genocide. This was not the case. We were really looking for words. I remember those, how to articulate what has happened to us, what is going on. We were devoid of words for many, many weeks. In December, January was the the case which we all were watching on ICJ, and we got more informed of what's really going on in Gaza, in the beginning of the starvation, the siege, the bombardments, the killing, the destruction. It was already the ground invasion, after the ground invasion, and then I came up with my friend Michael Sfard. We wrote an article. I wrote an article, but we had this initiation to demand Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memories Authority in Israel, at least if it's not, they don't believe it's a genocide, but the genocidal rhetoric was all over, at least to condemn the genocide rhetoric, and they refused. And so and then in April, it took me. I was in New York. I was invited for 1 month's fellowship, and from outside, for the first time, I could really articulate to myself, and this is why this is the title of the article. I said, yes, it is a genocide, despite everything, despite our shock, our trauma, despite the losses, despite everything, despite it is a genocide, and we cannot avoid it. And once you understand this, it puts obligations on you. This is what I felt, and since I was now, why, in a word, why did I understand what happened? I understood that it's not only about Hamas, it's about the Palestinian people, and we could already see after a few months. And I am not proud that it happened only in April, but at least in April, I could say, look, Gaza does not exist anymore as a livable place. The Gaza society does not exist as a collective because it was destroyed from within and from, its elites, its hospitals, we can go on and on. This is a genocide because the core idea of genocide, regardless of all the very important legal issues, is that genocide is destroying a collective in whole or in part. And this is what happened. It was not only the people, which were at that time, I think 30,000, more than 30,000 were killed, or 40,000 in April, 30,000, I think, around more than 30,000, and lamed, but the whole collective was destroyed. It just did not, and then I understood it was a genocide. And I read all the reports, I was following very, very carefully. It was a horrifying acknowledgement. It's not, you don't want to be part of the perpetrator society. But when you see what you see, you have to acknowledge and name it for what it is.
Yeah, I was in Israel on October 7th, actually. So I also witnessed, and I didn't get out in time. I wanted to leave the country actually on the 8th of October. That was the plan. And then all the planes were canceled for a moment, and it was difficult to get on other planes. So I left like on the 12th. And yeah, I can definitely, even from my perspective as a Palestinian in Israel, can definitely refeel your explanations on the shock and the sheer, the constant new news that were dripping back then about the amount of the atrocities that had happened during October 7th. And also the knowledge in me, there was a lot of knowledge foreboding inside of me, let's say, where I realized that this will probably be, at least that's how I thought. I thought this is the end of Palestine. This is the end of the Palestinians, in the sense of the answer to this will be an unleashing of something else that we haven't seen before. But maybe we can talk about this in a second. I'm already diverging too much.
If I can just
sure, just anytime.
Recently, it was published that the chief of staff, Herzia Levy, wife, said that when he went out of his home on the 7th of October, he told her,
"Yep,
Gaza will be destroyed."
Right. Yes. No, even I remember on the 8th of October, I think Netanyahu spoke to the public, and we heard it in the radio. I don't speak Hebrew, but my family translated some stuff, And the way that they were speaking about, no, we won't leave no stone on the other stone, everything will be unturned, there will be nothing left, etc. Like even Netanyahu himself, it became clear, okay, that they go for, I'm sorry to draw this parallel, but they go for a final solution of this problem for them, in the sense of that they want to end this. At least that was the rhetoric from the first day.
Yes. The rhetoric was genocidal from day one, but the shock and trauma and the sense of victimhood, which was for the first days justified, because really it was a criminal attack after all. Killing 100 non-combatants, 800 non-combatants, taking hostages, even children. It was, and we didn't have the capacity even to put it into words. I can't, it's very difficult to represent this, because we are already 2 years in distance from it, and so many things happened since then. But the first days were, and we didn't even time to mourn our own dead. So the first days were something I did not experience in my lifetime.
Okay, you already mentioned a little bit about what genocide is, at least according to international law. There needs to be something that there needs to be proven something that is called intent, and that's what I would like you to maybe start with, to explain a little bit what is genocide actually, and why is it so problematic to, or normally, let's say, problematic to prove it, as one has to focus on this question of intent.
Yeah, I first want to say that I'm not a legal expert. I'm a historian. I'm a cultural historian, and I deal a lot with genocides. And even if you look at, so there's the historical understanding or sociological, political understanding of genocide, political science understanding, and there's the legal understanding of genocide. They are connected, but they do not overlap. And the issue of intent stands between them. So for me, as I told you, I understood at a certain point that they are destroying. What is their intent? I didn't go into their hand. I could understand from the conduct and from the utterances that they intend to destroy. But we will talk in a second about intent, how problematic a term it is. But for historians, it's not as important even if it is important, it's not so central in a sense. And you can see it already with the one who coined this term, Raphael Lemkin, was a Polish Jew who immigrated. He actually fled the Nazis. His family was killed by the Nazis, and he invented this term of genocide. And you can see in his writing, sometimes he writes as a legal expert, and he was the main force leading to the convention, 1948 genocide prevention and punishing the crime of genocide in December 1948. But he was also historian of this phenomena. And when you read most of his writings, he doesn't put so much emphasis, even in his 1944 book on the Axis rule in Europe, where the 9th chapter describes this new concept of genocide. The issue of intent is there, but it's not very important. Other things are much more important for him, and he doesn't even talk about killing, only on killing. So from my perspective, it's not as important, but I will try to it is not as important, not because the way it was interpreted legally is very, very harsh, and the bar of proving intent is so high that we cannot use it as historians. Now, I'm not a legal historian, I'm not a legal expert, I try to explain. So the convention says, and if you let me that the Article 2, which is the most important, it's the core of the 1948 convention, says, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts. there are 5 acts, with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. So you have to, it's not only that you the outcome is genocidal. You have to show that, you have to prove that it was done with this intent to destroy the group. What Israel is saying, no, we don't want to destroy the group. It's the collateral damage. It's a side outcome. We want to destroy Hamas. We are fighting Hamas. We could, if we wanted to destroy Gaza, as Benjamin Netanyahu said, we could have done it in one afternoon to kill everybody. We have the force, the power, so we are aiming at Hamas. Unfortunately, in order to destroy Hamas, we destroy all of Gaza and we kill more than 100,000 people by now, according to the most conservative assessment, beyond what the health ministry in Gaza counts. So, and in court, you have to prove there was an intent not only to destroy Hamas, and therefore, as an outcome, the destruction happened, but the intent was to destroy that group as such. And this is very difficult. And the courts in the 1990s raised the bar even higher when they said, it's not only that you have to prove that it is that's the intent of the action, which you have to prove that it was the only reasonable intention of the action. If you have double, you can, as we all have, in our life, we do things for multiple reasons, multiple motives, and is motive and intent same thing? That's another question. But we have various motivations to do things, and it's very difficult to understand motivation. One day you think this motivated you, and the other thing you say that motivated you. Nonetheless, the bar is so high that not only that you need to prove intent to destroy a group as such, you have to prove that it was the only reasonable intent. There is no, even if you have double intents, that would not qualify according to the bar that was raised by the courts in the 1990s on the Balkan, in the tribunal for former Yugoslavia. So this, by now, I think it will be, as you quoted, I think most legal scholars that I heard, or at least that express themselves, international legal scholars, understand, particularly since March, when Israel broke unilaterally, heinously, the ceasefire agreement and put a siege for several months. Since then, I think, and since this Riviera plan that is, it's against the whole Palestinian population, as horrific as it sounds, I think most of the ones I read, including very conservative ones, and including William Shabbos, think that there is a very good case crossing even this high bar of that the legal system, international legal system, put. You should ask legal scholars, but already for many years there's a lot of critique on the courts that it raised the bar so high, and maybe they might change in this case, and also in another case that they are dealing of Gambia versus the Myanmar on the Rohingya case. They might, if not lower the bar, change a little bit the criteria, because otherwise, for many years, there's a huge critique of making it actually a dead letter, that you cannot use it if the bar is so high. So almost nothing can qualify for a genocide.
Yeah, it's nearly cynical, because in the end, I think when something qualifies as a genocide, there is an obligation under international law for the parties, for the state parties, to actually intervene and do something about it. And hence, raising that bar kind of allows for much more.
Let me ask
much
you
more
this.
freedom of carnage, basically.
Yes. Then what do we need then the convention for?
Yeah.
But let me ask you this: if Israel would have said, we want to destroy the Hamas, and that's a legitimate military target, but in order to do that, we know that we will kill 80% of the population, maybe 100%. Not that we have anything against them, but because we kill the Hamas, this is the only way we can kill the Hamas. According to the high bar, would that qualify as a genocide? I think even they would have to acknowledge that in such case it's a genocide, because you have to somehow see that this is the intention. If you understand that those are the consequences, that's a genocide, because you actually eliminate. Now, take into consideration that governments and armies don't want to criminalize themselves. So they always say,
of course.
This is what they say in order to, in the Israeli case, we have so many counter assertions, expressions, that even this will be very difficult for them to say.
Yeah, and as you state in one of your other pieces that I also found very interesting, is that genocides, according to genocide scholarship, are many times, if not like most of the times, accompanied with some kind of language about self-defense and defense of some properties.
Yes. This is almost always. Even the Nazis, when they killed
the
Jews, now there it was a real fantasy. The Jews did not threaten them, but it was in their heads. But the Ottoman Empire and the Armenians and the Tutsi and the Hutu and the Herero and the Nama and the German case in Western, it's always a case of feeling, or sometimes even justified, of self-defense, and that does not excuse a genocide. Even criminal, one crime does not excuse another crime, certainly not a genocide.
One thing that sometimes our guests claim or make that statement, that there is a genocide happening in Gaza, and one thing that we nearly every time get as answers in the comments and from people that try to fight this narrative, is that you can't decide that because you're not the International Court of Justice. You don't, in the end, we only know when it's a genocide when the ICJ rules it as such. So what would you say to this argument? Is that really the case? Does genocide only exist when the ICJ, which is clearly, we've seen that in the last 2 years, is not an organ that is free of politics? When the ICJ rules it as such, is it only then a genocide?
Well, I can tell you that this is really a disgusting way of thinking. I can't say it. It's a disgusting way of thinking. I would tell those people to look in the eyes of the children of Gaza. Look at those videos of the bombardments. Look at the starved people. Look at the lame people. Read those letters, those wills that they write before. And look at the destruction. Look at those who don't have security, don't have on the destroyed hospitals. Look at the pregnant women. Look at the Muwasi. Look at that, and then say, no, it's okay. Calm down. We have 5 years now to go, 3 years to go. Then we will know if a crime was committed against you. It's disgusting. It's a way to deny the crime that in front of our eyes, and it's only a way to dismiss yourself from the responsibility. And now, beyond what I said, the convention says. The convention is called, and this is legal expert told me it's not regular in international law. In its title, there is already the obligation to prevent, not only to punish.
Genocide prevention.
How can you prevent if it's over by the time you have the ruling of the ICJ in 2028, 2029, who knows? this is precisely the opposite. The whole idea of the convention is prevention, and say, look, what we have in our eyes is either almost a genocide, or it can turn out to be a genocide and looks like a genocide, or it is a genocide. And when so many people, experts in the field, human rights organizations, legal experts, states, I mean, almost the whole world says it's a genocide. You say, no. You can be killed by the dozens every day. You can starve to death. We are not yet convinced. Now, the hypocrisy here is so, as I said, disgusting. I don't have any other word for that, because it really, why did Germany officially supports Gambia in the lawsuit against Myanmar, asserting that it is a genocide? Before this is how it goes. We have to cry out it is a genocide. And the Armenian genocide was never acknowledged by any ICJ because it happened before. So it's not a genocide because no legal authority decided that. This is
I think legally
it's stupid. It's such a stupid argument.
Legally speaking, I think even the Holocaust wasn't really ruled as literally ruled as an ICJ recognized genocide.
Because Lemkin didn't manage. I mean, it was not one of the offenses on which Nazi Germany was tried in the Nuremberg file. He didn't succeed in putting it in one of the, like in the London conference, they decided on 4 other crimes, but crime against the peace, aggression, crimes against humanity, but not genocide. So no legal authority ever. I mean, let's move on. It's such a stupid argument.
Yes.
It's a stupid and morally disgusting argument. I can't put it any other way. And it's typical German, by the way.
Yes, I can affirm that. Okay, let's go quickly then back to intent. And you already hinted at a problem there. In October 2024, you wrote a very interesting piece. Interesting for those who are interested in genocide studies and Holocaust studies. You wrote a piece that was called "The Problematic Return of Intent." Maybe you can shortly wrap this and tell us what's so problematic about intent, like the way that you described this now. Okay, we know it's a high bar, but in which way is it a return to genocide studies? In which way was it already gone, and why is its return problematic?
Yeah, but in the first generation of Holocaust historians, now I refer to the Holocaust, they tried, there were two, since the 80s, I would say, there were two main schools, one called the intentionalist and one called the functionalist or structuralist school. And they debated for nearly 2 decades. And this was like the founding blocks of Holocaust history. And the intentionalist school really understood the crime, like how the Holocaust, how the final solution happened, because there was some kind of intent up there by Hitler and the Nazi elite. And now the functionalist school saw that, proved that this was not the case, because it took like since 1933 to the end of 1941 until it evolved. And even if at the beginning they didn't want, there was no intent, even after Hitler put it publicly in January 1939, that if the world will be taken into a world, the Jews will push the world into another world war, the annihilation of the Jews will be the outcome. That's an intent. But then we see nothing happened. No final solution until the end of 1941.
Yeah, it took like one and a half years until something started.
Even more, like since September 1939, or actually 2 years, at least 2 years, until it became a complete annihilation program. So, and the whole issue of intent in history is very suspicious, because how can you prove intent? As we said, people have multiple intents. So now, if we go now, sometimes there are structural explanations for genocide. You have to bring in not only intentions, but some more vague ideological or public opinion or political imagination or economical factors, or I mean, there are all kinds of. This is how we do history. We don't just focus on one factor, which is intent, just because some legal, and we have to admit that those, when it was formulated in 1948, they put such special emphasis on intent because they wanted to cover themselves, so they will not be so it was a kind of one of the reasons that intent is so central is political. Already in 1948, those who articulated and accepted it in the United Nations. We have to remember that at that time the global South was hardly represented. So going back to historians, we are not obliged to this intent in order to explain sufficiently in a complex manner how genocide or any other, or mass violence or any other event occurs. There are multiple reasons, there are multiple motivations. We have to explain it in a very complex way until now in various contexts. Now, reducing everything now to intent for me is very problematic as a historian, because this really narrows my possibilities of understanding and explaining such horrific events, but all events. You cannot explain it only with this intent or with this very narrow understanding of intent. So I wrote an article saying that now, as I said, I think legally and historically and sociologically and from political science, what we see in Gaza is a genocide. And we have to remember that the Holocaust is not the only form of genocide. You know, even the conventions explicitly says in whole or in part. You don't. It's not only a genocide when everyone is killed or everybody is sought to kill. So here we have a case that not everybody is killed. Many. The percentage is growing. Those who were killed or lamed, we can go back to the convention and see how it fits perfectly to what is going now in Gaza. But in any case, if we go back to the intent, so I think legally we crossed even the high bar by now, but historically and as a political phenomenon, we don't have to narrow ourselves to intent, because then we will not understand, we will not be able to explain anything, and we will go and we will go back 30-40 years back in our explanations and a toolbox, like historical toolbox, to explain such complex events like genocides.
Yeah, it really serves, like this whole debate around intent really serves as a like you said, as a tool to relativize and to actually be able to relativize in probably nearly any case that could be a genocide case, and say, no, but actually I intended something else, you know, and thereby you always can, it's nearly like a loophole for the states by which they can, you know, withdraw them of any responsibility.
And they use it. Till this day, Turkey says it was a war. It was not a genocide, because we were in war. They were uprising, and we just wanted our security. We wanted to obtain our security, and this is what this is what the Germans said in Western Africa, this is also in Bosnia. I mean, always it's always like they say, we didn't intend to destroy. We intended to pursue security. It's a real loophole, and this is why there's a lot of even before the genocide, way before the genocide. And you hear it from legal experts, from states, from as you said, it's a loophole that almost make a joke of this convention.
Yeah, it really. I mean, this is a different discussion, but it really opens up a whole debate on what this international law actually is or is supposed to be, because that teaches you already that it's not that what people believe of it, like this ideal of, you know, a law for everybody that is supposed to create peace and prosperity between states. Yeah. But okay, let's come back. Maybe one last question for the question of the genocide, and it might be not so relevant, but as you, maybe you did not change your mind, but as you now explained, you came to that conclusion in April in 2024, and then obviously some of your assessments changed on what's happening there. Would you now, in retrospect, say that the genocide, or does this even matter to speak about it in this way, that the genocide started from October 7th on, or did it change its nature because of some reasons afterwards, became a genocide afterwards, or how would you characterize this?
Look, I mean, I'm not, historians will dwell into this question, or I would not put it this way, because I don't know when a genocide, yes, it started, I don't know exactly when it started. It started on the 7th, for me, on the 7th or the 8th or the 9th of October. I don't know now. Historians will have to look into, because this is not enough. We have to understand, because we're almost 2 years into this event, and there were changes, so many changes, political changes, military changes in the form of the Israeli government, of the Israeli army, of the American administration. I mean, many things changed. And historians, like, again, what I know best, Nazi Germany, the policy change evolves. When do we start saying it was a genocide? From only till this day, we cannot really, when there's no one, order from Hitler saying kill today the genocide. We are now formally starting the genocide. So historians will have to, I don't know if the archives will ever be opened. I'm not sure that there is a full archive, because we know some of the meetings were not recorded, or some of the records were changed, records were changed, and they will open, I don't know when, but historians have other ways, interviews, witnesses, and it's already coming out. You have great investigations by the ones I know best are the Israeli ones, like Yuval Avraham, who publishes in local call 972 in The Guardian. You have the project of Lee Mordechai, comprehending a huge amount of evidence by now. So we will have, like historians will have a lot of work in order to try to analyze the various aspects and phases, political, military, diplomatically, of this genocide. I think it is too early to assert anything but that there is a genocide, that it is still going on, that Israel has to be held for accountable, and that it has to stop, not today, but 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And this is what we know. A more nuance, it will take time until we can have a more nuanced assessment. We don't know what the Hamas, we will need also, it's not only about Israel, about the Palestinian society, about the Hamas, about we will have to collect much more data, and it will be a long process of many historians and sociologists and political scientists and legal experts until we put together, we will have the whole picture of this horrific event.
Yes. Okay, I would like to go over to maybe some, not questions about, whether or not it's a genocide, but let's take that as our basis and then maybe have a little bit of a discussion, or also some personal information that I find interesting. Like, for example, as you already said that you now try to speak, or since then you try to speak out whenever you can. And I wonder, when you say these statements to your fellow Israelis, how do they react to this assessment normally? Do they care? Do they deny your claim? Do they accept it but justify it? And most interesting for me would be, do you see there an opening, even like when you talk to them, by making that argument convincingly that some change in the minds of people is possible there?
Okay, again, this is a process. It took me some time. I'm not proud of it, but only in April I could, as I said, answer myself assertively and say, yes, it is genocide. And the whole Israeli Jewish society is also changing and moving. So what was very difficult in April 2024, and certainly before that, is much more acceptable now in September 2025. Because of various, things changed. The war does not end. It is, I think most Israelis by now understand that crimes are committed in, if not most Israelis acknowledge the starvation, but many Israelis, a minority, but not a neglected minority, believe there is a starvation. There's a deliberate starvation in Gaza. If I remember correctly, the polls, most Israelis support, the ethnic cleansing. And also, so it's very different now from now. Most Israel, it's different. Like when I came out with this, even in I had a very, some told me, who were not completely like-minded, but some told me, well, it's the first time I read a reasonable explanation why this charge is not outrageous, it's not far-fetched. But most, of course, not. Many were angry. Today, I think more people acknowledge it, whether they acknowledge it as such, as a genocide, or they would not say that, but they would say Israel is committing horrible crimes. Many more. I think still for sure, most Israelis don't think so, but many do think so. So the atmosphere has changed. Particularly that today all polls show that most Israelis want to end the war. They do not understand why we are still killing and are being killed, mostly killed. And they want the hostages back. So there is, even those who are acting purely, are more open to listen, because they understand that this government is a criminal government. And it's, even for us, it's cruel and sadistic, really sadistic, even towards us. So they are much more open to listen to those allegations of, or not allegations, those that the charges of the genocide or huge crimes against humanity. And you see it already penetrating, certainly Haaretz, which covers it more and more. There are some great reports by Nir Hasson and other investigations, and also more and more in mainstream media. Still, most of the Israelis, according to the polls, do not acknowledge the genocide, and not even mass atrocities. I don't know how it is put, but certainly, and now the media in Israel still does not show almost anything, even the starvation. And they believe, most Israelis, I think, believe that there is no starvation. But as I said, not a significant minority believes that it is. So things change, and now people are much more open to listen to this. And I'm today in Israel. I'm not far from being the only voice. And today, after 2 years, you have Palestinian voices that enable to voice out their views under repression with arrests, but it's not like in the beginning, when it was so violent, and your family probably experienced it as Palestinians within 1948 Israel. So things change. There's an opportunity now, but still a big chunk of as I said, all polls show that the majority want to end the war, but the government doesn't want to end the war, and a big minority doesn't want to end the war, and it doesn't end.
Right. I come back to that question, because one thing that is interesting is that a majority wants to end the war. I also saw some polls in this direction, especially also getting back the hostages and like ending that situation. At the same time, as far as I saw, it's not the most recent, but it's a couple of months old. They are not opposed to that ethnic cleansing campaign, as you already said. So that's kind of contradictory in this sense, which is like, which is the reason why some people claim or interpret it in a way that they say, yeah, they want the hostages back, and then what happens afterwards, if the war continues or the cleansing campaign continues, is less of importance for them. What do you think about that?
But even if you listen to the soldiers who are now refused to show up to the war, they say in a press conference, it's about the hostages, it's about endless war, but it's also about killing innocent people. So there's more and more awareness and what you said is right. Still, most Israelis, and in recent polls, if they would support an ethnic cleansing. This is the fantasy. This is most Israelis hold this political fantasy. No Palestinians anymore. But they understand, more and more understand, that it is not they cannot accomplish it. And if even the prices are too high for that, internationally and internally, and the hostages and the dead soldiers, and even then, nobody believes that it is accomplished. It could be accomplished. So here, you have, yes, the mind, the collective mindset is very complex. Is not very, but is complex among Israeli Jews. Criminal, undoubtedly, for its most part, as you said. And the army is still continuing the genocide. And there are enough soldiers who show up for various reasons, sometimes because of, comradeship. But still, it's different than a year ago.
Okay.
Very different.
All right. Switching gears a little bit, because one other question that I would like to shortly elaborate with you is something that I saw or I noticed especially when Western, particularly when German media interview people like you, scholars, intellectuals, activists that make compelling arguments for the fact that genocide is happening there. And one thing that I find astonishing, I asked the same question to Omar Batrov when he was here a couple of weeks ago, that the interviewers, especially in Germany here, when they would, for example, I don't know, they would talk to you and you say there is a genocide going, and then the first reaction of them, and basically their whole interrogation would then be really the future existence of security of Israel. And what's really rarely discussed, like the reaction nearly never is a question of, okay, there is a genocide happening. Let's care about what's happening to the Palestinian people. Let's talk about their future existence, their security. It's as if they only exist as a backdrop to debates over Israel's legitimacy, actually. Yeah. So the genocide, the question whether it's a genocide, yes or no, only exists in a realm of Israel's actions and existence legitimized. Do you notice this too? And if you do, like, how do you reflect on this imbalance of focus?
On the one hand, okay, I mean, yes, of course, there's no on the one hand. First of all, we have to acknowledge it. It's racist, it's colonial, it's orientalist, it's disgusting. It's and it's everywhere. It's very severe in Germany, but it's not only there. Not only that you hardly hear Palestinian voices. Even, there were some investigations on the BBC. Even when they bring those testimonies from Gaza, they have to be so cautious and they dehumanize it because when they talk about Israeli casualties, they humanize, and when they talk about Palestinians, it's like they dehumanize it. So yeah, I mean, racism and colonial mindset still prevails. You had this, I would say, almost grotesque example when former German President Joachim Gauck spoke about how difficult it is for him to acknowledge the genocide, or even not, I don't think he acknowledged genocide, Israel committing crimes, because he doesn't, not because of the victims, not because of the suffering of Gaza, of the Palestinians, the destruction, the genocide. Maybe there will not be, in the West Bank, not because the Nakba, not because of this whole history, because his beloved Israel has changed and betrayed his racist perceptions.
That's a fun fact. Just a small anecdote. I was on a podium with Gesine Schwan, who is she was an applicant for the presidential position a couple of years ago. She's from the SPD, and we were debating what's happening in Palestine and Israel these days. And at some point, she accused me, really, like with an accusatory tone, and said, "Yeah, for you Palestinians," pointing at me, which I'm a German, I'm a German citizen. I speak clear German, but for you Palestinians, it's very easy to speak about Israel and Palestine. For us Germans, it's very, very difficult. Yeah, that's the mindset.
I have so many things to say about this, that it's up to us. It isn't like to try to change it whenever we're in any position of power to insert. So in a way, when I am in a way, I am complicit, because they ask me as a Jew, and I play this game as an Israeli Jew, as if I have more authority, and I play this game in order to promote the notion of genocide, because I think this is the only way it can stop. Sure. And Israel could be held for account, and maybe we one day reach also some kind of process of reconciliation and solving this problem. But I play into it. I don't say don't ask me. Go to the Palestinian scholar who knows just as good as much as I know, or even better. So it's a dilemma also, when you want to speak out. And I always say, look, you have to invite, not me, invite Palestinians. But even then, I acknowledge and participate in this game because I have the microphone to say this. Anyhow, I don't see how we can get out of this. And I have to say a few things about it. We co-edited this book, The Holocaust and the Nakba, and I think Bashir, who was really a great scholar, Palestinian scholar with Israeli citizenship. He gave some public talk and an interview in Germany. Oh my God, he gave the most I would say, smart and the most, like, the deep, smart analysis and of the situation, and even in our time when his people are under genocide, reaching out for a path of reconciliation. And it came like an automaton. He was accused of anti-Semitism. Now, he outsmarts all his critiques. Now, we are friends. I learned a lot from him. I think he learned a lot from me. We collaborate almost from 10 years about on issues that we might talk, and I don't know if they are, in what way they are relevant in our time. So he's my friend, of course, but it was such an indication of how the German discussion goes. You cannot really mainstream. I'm not talking about, we're talking here, we are in a German show, but mainstream political class, and with this stupid Staatsräson and Israel-related anti-Semitism and Israel, Existenzrechts Israel, and all those slogans that became, if you are talking from a Palestinian point of view and you are a Palestinian, there is no way it's like really what Lyotard said when you are entering a discourse that there is no way you can utter your position and pursue justice. It's the discourse. There is no way you are ground into this in this discursive mechanism. And you see it also in anti-Semitism, and the IRA definition of anti-Semitism is a clear example for that. For example, why? Because, first of all, there is no anti-Palestinian definition that we have to follow when we talk about without falling into racism. And second, if according to Israel, since its inception, certainly now, calls the Palestinians constantly Nazis. But if you call Israel conduct of the genocide resembles Nazi conduct, oh my God, you are anti-Semite. And then it says in this stupid IRA definition, it says denying the Jewish people the right of self-determination is anti-Semitic. But denying the Palestinian people, which is not an idea, this is a practice of, since Israel was established, certainly in the 10 years, it's an official policy. It's not even hinted. And that's a legitimate stance. So this whole discourse, we are operating in a very twisted and immoral, I would say, colonial and racist discursive framework. And within it, we have to carve, and for the Palestinians, it's much more difficult to carve our position in order to change it and this is one of the reasons why the genocide continues in Gaza, continues for so long, and we haven't even spoken about the West Bank.
Right.
And East Jerusalem and inside Israel.
Right. Like this discursive elimination of this position, of course, helps to justify any kind of support then, because all critics of it are being silenced.
It's structural. It's structural. Whatever you say is an anti-Semitic trope. For that reason, Palestinian is being Palestinian. As you said, you are not a German. Being Palestinian, if you are, it's like it's the logic almost of contamination. You could see it in the Documenta exhibition. It's a completely racist. This is not a view. It's a structure of this whole. It's a structure of this whole discourse, political discourse, that And the only way to change it, I think, is from within, because it has, like international law, it has openings in which we can penetrate and open more and more space, or at least potentially, because no system, even such racist discursive system, is not completely full and coherent and unpenetratable.
All right. Switching gears one more time. Now this will be a little bit longer question.
Can I just say one more thing about?
Of course, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. You know, my friend and colleague Bashir, he spoke on he was given the opportunity in Germany to speak because of his, nobody did him a favor because of his capacities, on the highest stages, and still on the Moss lecture, and he was a fellow in Vico, and still he was grounded in this by those journalists, one from the FATS, both I think published in FATS. He was grounded in this discursive mechanism of shutting up and stigmatizing as anti-Semitic. It was so it was so symptomatic.
Yeah, that's why it was so. That's why I really laughed out loud back then when she told me that it's hard for me to speak, because at the same time I was going to that podium, to that colloquium that we had there, and I was scared literally scared for my security. Literally, I thought, like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe, I will ruin my life by doing this. And then I get told something like this. Yeah.
Sometimes you really feel you are in an upside down world.
Yes. Right. So the next question, and it's also something that you have already hinted at. I also spoke to Professor Bartov about this, and I would like to have your view on this. So, because of my family history, I have since long always engaged politically, or let's say even intellectually only, on the issue of Israel Palestine. And I always thought that, actually friends of mine can attest to this, I always thought that if the situation would not change by external forces, it would result in something like a genocide of the Palestinian people. I don't want to say I predicted October 7 explicitly, but I really believe that, like, the status quo that was existing before that would inevitably lead to extreme violence. And also I thought, like, even violence triggered by the subjugated ones, by the Palestinians, because they want to get rid of this situation that they are in, and in whatever ideological form, and however ugly it will then look also in the end. I thought that was inevitable. It would happen. And I also thought that, like, a project like an ethno-nationalist project like Zionism, I thought, is logically determined to lead to something like ethnic cleansing and genocide. Since, what else is supposed to be the Jewish state in a land without a Jewish majority if it doesn't mean subjugation of the other folk, the Fremdvolk? And all kinds of settler colonial initiatives before resulted in, at least to some degree, in some kind of elimination of the native. And mostly also, by the way, as an answer to maintain supremacy, as an answer to resistance, and then maintaining supremacy. So I was wondering, and this is also what I would like to ask you, like, do you see this necessity in the sense of would have a Jewish supremacist project in the Middle East possible, even without displacement, cleansing, or something like genocide? Or is this not actually something that we then need to criticize, like this whole idea of the Jewish state?
Yeah, what you're actually saying is that there's a kind of, an internal settler colonial logic within the Zionist project. And I think you are right. I think this question is worth a yearly seminar. It's an annual. It's a big question.
Of course, yes.
Because it's because we know that settler colonial enterprises evolved and ended or reached various outcomes. I mean, what happened to the indigenous population in North America is not the same in South Africa, and it's not the same in Algeria, and it's not the same in Israel, Palestine. It depends on various. So I think you are right. And I also wrote in 2011 an article in Haaretz, not a very short one, about the Herero and the Nama, ending it with a warning sign to us, because a colonial entity, a settler colonial entity that once is in a position to commit genocide or ethnic cleansing or harsh crimes, when the indigenous population, the indigenous people, indigenous nation, revolt against the situation you imposed on them, the supremacist. But various projects evolved and ended so in various ways. So I'm not, and it really depends on so many factors of the timing, the place, the political setting, the balance of power, the indigenous people themselves. I mean, there's so many. So what you said, in my understanding, is the eliminationist vector in Zionism, certainly since the 30s, either by expulsion or by killing or both, or repressing or apartheid, is very, very, very strong. Nonetheless, my view, and it's not only strong, now we see the outcome. You know, there's now, I said it also in seminars, there's such a huge attack on settler colonial, on the concept of settler colonialism, precisely in the moment, and because of this moment, that it proved to be right. That this eliminationist, genocidal.
You mean that the studies of settler colonialism are being attacked politically, as you know, and
as part of the woke, part of whatever. But because they prove we prove right. Nonetheless, I dare say that I think history, as I said, is not teleological. It has even, I think, the Oslo, the 1990s were an opening that was completely missed. Maybe because this settler colonial mindset, Israeli mindset, would not really acknowledge full rights of the Palestinians, but maybe other. It's not teleological, it's not linear, and the outcome is not always predicted from the outset, because we see various settings end up or change or evolve in different outcomes. And I think now, so I don't know what the outcome. I think what you see, one reasonable scenario, horrible scenario, that maybe it's even is this, which is a continuation and acceleration of what we already see in Gaza, and in a different sense and degree in the West Bank, which will also maybe spill over to other places. But I don't think it is inevitable.
Would you then say like inevitable in the sense, I would agree to this, because I think inevitable in the sense that some things can change and maybe avoid this outcome. For sure not. One has just to imagine that Israel's military projection capabilities were not supported by the US in the last 30 years. What would they have been able to do, you know? I mean, there are many parameters that could switch, of course, but ultimately, I think when it comes to some kind of reconciliation, what has to be given up, though, is this idea of a Jewish supremacist state, because I think that cannot be reconciled with an indigenous population that is still there, at least. Or can it?
I mean, look, I don't know if I don't, I can talk about the past, I can talk about aspirations. I'm not sure I know how the future, I'm sure I know nothing about the future. And what you said is right. And this is one reason why things might change, because America is now not only, is undergoing great changes, not only in the relation to Israel, but internally, and we don't know how it's going to, and we can't envision how the United States is going to look like 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. And this is going to be a huge change, because it might make a huge change, because despite the racism and supremacist and really this growing fraction of Israeli society, which is racist and fascist in the most brutal way, and they are now holding the steering wheel. Israel is 100% dependent on America, on the United States, 100%, for technology, for intelligence, for military, for diplomacy, for everything. It is 100%. And if this changes, we will see changes also in our region. So this is why nothing is one scenario very depressing, which is reasonable, that the genocide and expulsion, ethnic cleansing will accelerate, and they will not reach a deal, and maybe they will not be able to expel all the Gazans out of Gaza, but they will live on the rubbles for decades now, with like a huge concentration or some kinds of DP camp in the worst conditions. I don't know how. This is one option that will change the situation of the Middle East, but others, more optimistic ones, are going in some kind of reconciliations. Many times after such disasters, there is an option of reconciliation. I don't see now the way, but it might, as I say, come down the road. And yes, then Jews will have to give up all our privileges in whatever setting we have. In whatever, is it a two-state solution, a one-state solution, a federal, a confederation, whatever rights we take for ourselves, the Palestinians will have to enjoy just as well. Now, as you hinted before, we are in a position of more than half of the population don't have rights or have partial rights, and one half of the population enjoy full rights. And this is not only unjust, it's unsustainable. So yes, any reconciliation and any resolution and any agreement will have to be based, not like the Oslo Accords. This was the huge loophole within the Oslo Accords. Have to be based on complete equality, which means this is what Bashir calls egality. This is something I learned from him: egalitarian binationalism. Egalitarian binationalism can be implemented in various political forms, but the idea is that collective, individual, civil rights are granted in an equal way to both people. No Jewish supremacy and not supremacy, other supremacy, not also Palestinian supremacy, if we can say it now, whatsoever. And I think for reaching that, Jewish Israeli society has to undergo a huge mental, psychological, ideological change. Whether they will call it after Zionism or not Zionism is not important. But Zionism as we know it could not fuel the collective identity of Israelis anymore, because it is based on Jewish supremacy. Some say that real Zionism is egalitarian from the outset. Okay, I don't care, call it Zionism, real Zionism. The idea is that full equality is the basis for any agreement, and hopefully some kind of reconciliation in the future. That now, whether we can even talk about reconciliation while the butchery is still going on in Gaza, and the violence in the West Bank, and the repression in Israel, and is it even moral to talk about it in this situation?
Yeah.
That's another question, and I talk about it very humbly. And if one doesn't want to listen to that, I can understand it. Not only I think I would be in the same position. But if you ask me about reconciliation, I think this is an essential condition of reconciliation.
Yeah, no, I totally understand also your caveats here. I actually do want to go into a little bit more detail of this idea of reconciliation, and maybe take the Palestinian perspective. In this book, you and your co-writers, you investigate what you call a new grammar, so a new way to speak about connected traumas, one being the Holocaust, one being the Nakba, as an opening door, like to be able to find let's say, a common language to speak about these things that doesn't diminish the experience and the trauma of the other, and then allows you to reconcile and move on to build something new. Now, this was written in 2018, where at least this genocide, I mean, they have already like quite a few things had happened until then. Of course, we had the Nakba and many wars, but the genocide has not happened yet. And I wonder, speaking from the Palestinian perspective, where the state of Israel has unleashed its genocide on them, after such devastation, how would a reconciliation look like, in the sense of, like, how can, let's say it like this, how can someone expect to deal normally, from a Palestinian in Gaza, for example, to deal normally with Israel, or with the new state that will have also these perpetrators inside of the state? I mean, if you think of Germany, for example, the same could be asked for Jews. That's why many Jews didn't want to stay in Germany after 45, because how could they? Like, how all these people, that were for large parts on board with what was happening, as far as they knew it, at least, how could they want to stay there? And with Germany, one has not to forget that they were subdued in the war. That's why actually they were forced to reconciliate, and it was more of a fig leaf, really. To get back on the world stage as a state, other than real reconciliation, really thinking of where this came from. So I wonder, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but I wonder, like, I'm trying to depict this. How could this work? What would have to happen in order for this to be possible?
Look, of course, I can't talk for the Palestinians, and what you said is not only understandable. I mean, I don't expect anyone in Gaza to listen to me at all, or to talk to me, of course. Nonetheless, there are people in Gaza who are still in contact with Israeli Jews, and through them convey their message. So I am not in a position right now to expect anything. I am in a position to hope that, first of all, we will be able to stop this genocide, and violence will stop, and some, first of all, food will go into, and medicine, and
sure,
just this. Okay, forget reconciliation for this is not important now. We need anesthesia for operations on children. Okay, that we know what's going on. So first, this now. Nonetheless, So I am not in a position as an Israeli Jew to expect anything. Certainly not to tell anybody how to feel about this conversation. But I can hope, and I see that many for Palestinians in Israel and also in the West Bank are eager, and even in Gaza, are eager to hold this conversation and eager to find a way out of this supremacist, racist logic, settler colonial logic of annihilation, of elimination, of genocide. And for that to happen, certainly there must be a lot of pressure from the outside, but also there has to be some kind of conversation between us. And as I said, I cannot expect, certainly not impose, but I can hope that a conversation, as difficult as it is, that will, as Bashir and I also discuss it, like we are very much invested in this binational project in the sense that the story has to be told in an egalitarian way and in a binational way, and the political outcome, we have to change our whole mindset for an egalitarian binational mindset. And we also ask ourselves, what does it mean now in times of genocide? And we don't have certain, I will speak for myself, I don't have easy answers for that. But I still want, first of all, so what within this framework of Holocaust and Nakba, we will also have to integrate the current genocide. And this will happen in the world. And I mean, in various places, it's already happening that people want to talk about genocide, Holocaust, they talk about, and I think the genocide in Gaza is a continuation, in at least partially a continuation of the ongoing, a part of the ongoing Nakba. It's just another phase of this. So I don't have answers to you, Nadim, but I do want to hope that one of the outcomes, as I said, this is not an urgent thing. The urgent thing now is to stop the genocide, to start feeding people, and to start stop the expulsion and start rehabilitating, rebuilding Gaza, and those are the pressing issues. But I do want to believe that if there is an opening for something of better life for both people, we will not miss it because we don't have the language to talk about it. And we want to promote this humane, egalitarian language so it will be there for if an opening will occur for some kind of proceeding on the path of agreement, peace, reconciliation. There will be a language for that, and there will be people who are devoted and want to go down this path. So I humbly say that I think this project is still relevant even in our horrific dire times.
All right, Amos, I'm through with my questions now. As this topic is important, maybe there's something else you want to add as a closing remark. Then I would give you the stage one more time.
I say thank you again for having me, and really let's do I mean, everyone has to do his or her best, protesting in the street, talking about it in podcasts, publishing, just first of all to stop the genocide and the violence, the ongoing ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. We didn't talk about it, but
yes,
it's very bad as well. And start changing course and saving just people's and collectives' existential life, in order for us to even think, first of all, no, not in order for anything, just to stop it. That's the biggest cause that we have to work for, and then maybe think for a more egalitarian future, better egalitarian future for both people.
Thanks a lot, Amos, that you were here. That was really insightful, and we were honored to host you. I will maybe be in Israel in October. I hope to have some coffee with you and hit you up.
Yes, okay. I would love to. Thank you very much for having me, Nadim. And let's hope for better times.
Let's hope that. Thanks for everybody in the comments. Thanks for everybody in the live chat, and anybody that wants to give us any feedback, feel free to do that, and see you soon. Bye bye. Leute, wir brauchen eure Hilfe. Wenn euch dieses Video gefallen hat, klickt auf Like, abonniert den Kanal und vergesst nicht das Glöckchen zu drücken, damit ihr benachrichtigt werdet, wenn wir neuen Content droppen.
Außerdem solltet ihr uns überall folgen, wo wir verfügbar sind. Das ist Facebook, Instagram, Twitter und Twitch. Und wenn wir irgendwelche Ankündigungen machen oder Posts, dann shared, was das Zeug hält. Gebt uns all eure Liebe.
Wir haben mittlerweile ziemlich signifikante Kosten. Wenn ihr es euch irgendwie leisten könnt, unterstützt uns doch auf Patreon. Dann kommt ihr auch in den Genuss verschiedener Vorteile, wie zum Beispiel Zugang zu unserer Discord-Community oder Zugang zu den ultrageheimen Patreon-Episoden, die wir dort posten. Außerdem könnt ihr uns natürlich auch über PayPal Spenden zukommen lassen.
Außerdem haben wir mittlerweile einen eigenen Online-Shop. Das heißt, wenn ihr euch immer noch fragt, was ihr euren Lieben zu Weihnachten, Ostern oder sonst wie schenken könnt, geht dorthin und kauft duftes Merch.
Alle Links dazu hier in der Beschreibung oder auch auf unserer Webseite 99zu1.de.
Vielen Dank fürs Dabeisein, danke für die Unterstützung und wir sehen uns in diesem Theater.